Toss aside the touchy-feely notions of love in business and recognize the real power it holds. Welcome to the Love is Just Damn Good Business podcast with host Steve Farber. Drawing on his work with a wide variety of companies from the Fortune 100 to smaller family-owned businesses, Farber shares inspiring interviews with business leaders and proven strategies for how you can create experiences that your customers will love by developing a culture that your employees, teammates, and colleagues love working in. Discover why and how love, at the end of the day, is just damn good business for you too. Here's your host, Steve Farber.
Hi, this is Steve Farber, and welcome to another episode of the Love is Just Damn Good Business podcast. Today I'm going to share with you an interview that I did recently with my friend Ivan Misner. And I actually interviewed him originally for the book, Love is Just Damn Good Business, but I thought it would be cool to share that with you on the podcast. We had a great conversation. Ivan is the founder of a worldwide organization called BNI. BNI is the world's largest business networking organization. Ivan started the company in 1985, and it now has over 9,400 chapters through every populated continent on the world. I mean, something like, 175 different countries. Don't quote me on that number, but it's ridiculous. They've generated $16 billion worth of referral business for its members. That number is probably higher by now because every time I talk to Ivan, that number is higher. With every day that goes by, that number is higher. I don't know how you are with networking. Me personally, I'm not very good at it. So BNI is a wonderful structure where they bring people together, they bring professionals together in chapters around the world, and they make sure that the professions don't overlap in each chapter. So you'll only have one chiropractor, for example, one dentist, one insurance, one real estate person. And it's a really phenomenal model that Ivan started. And you're going to hear his story and how he started that company. Let me tell you a little bit more about Ivan. My personal connection with him is we are both members of the Transformational Leadership Council, which was a group founded by Jack Canfield of Chicken Soup for the Soul fame. And, Jack is just one of the most prolific and successful personal development authors on the planet. And he just brought together people that do similar kind of work, maybe 15 years ago now. I've been a member of TLC for the last 5 or 6 years or so. That's where Ivan and I connected, and I love him. I spoke at the BNI International Convention. I mention it in the book. So I wanted to pick Ivan's brain because it'll become obvious as you listen to this interview. But what he does is so deeply based on values that people love. So let me tell you a little bit about Ivan, and then we'll get right to the interview. His PhD is from the University of Southern California. He's a New York Times best-selling author. He's written 24 books. Who's in Your Room is I think his most recent. It's a phenomenal book. He's a columnist for Entrepreneur.com. He's been a university professor. He's been on board of trustees for University of Laverne, for example. And he has been called the father of modern networking by CNN and one of the top networking experts by Forbes. Nowadays, he refers to himself as the Colonel Sanders of BNI. He's not the CEO of BNI anymore, but he's still the face of the company and travels all around the world representing the brand of BNI and teaching people the power of networking. So he is the Colonel Sanders because he's got a little white goatee. Anyway, I thought that was cute. He is considered to be one of the world's leading experts. He's considered to be one of the world's leading experts in business networking. He's a keynote speaker. He's been on all over the place. LA Times, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, radio, TVs, all over the place. CNN, BBC, Today Show, all over. And he's been named the Humanitarian of the Year by the Red Cross. He does all kinds of great philanthropic work and charitable work through the BNI Foundation. And he's just a wonderful guy. I love him, love him, love him. So I hope you enjoyed this interview. Listen closely, because here's a guy who built what has become a global iconic brand almost by accident. And I bet that there are some great lessons in here for you in your business. So here he is, Dr. Ivan Misner. Enjoy.
Look, I'd like to tell you I had this vision of an international organization with groups all over the world, but the truth is I needed some referrals for my consulting practice. I was a business consultant, and I found that I got all my business through referrals. And so I put together a small group of people I trusted. They trusted me. We got together. We only take one person per profession, even from the first group. And we started referring each other. Someone came to that first group, and she couldn't join because her profession was represented. And she said, "This is incredible. I could get a ton of business out of a group like this. If you help me open up my own chapter, you can run 2 of these." And I actually said to her, I said, "No, this isn't what I do. I'm a business consultant. I don't run a network. I just happen to run this group because I was looking for referrals." And she said, "Well, this is sort of consulting, it'll help me with my business." I'm like, "Okay, fine." So I opened it. And when we opened that second group, 2 people came who couldn't join because their profession was represented. And both of them said, "This is great. I could get a ton of business out of this. Would you help me open up my own group?" And I said no to them. And they made the same argument. And I said, okay. At the end of the year, this was January 8th, 1985 is when I kicked off the first group. By December, we had 20 chapters.
So from January to December of the same year, you went from 0 to 20 chapters.
Yeah, without trying.
Yeah.
And what I found was that people desperately needed what we were doing, referrals, and they loved the format. They loved the structure. And I got that because I went to groups who I felt were incredibly mercenary. And I went to networking groups, not BNI, but before I started BNI, who I felt were really mercenary. And I'd leave those meetings and I felt like I'd been slimed.
So what did mercenary look like?
Hi, Steve, my name's Ivan. Let's do business. Let me sell. I got a product. You need this product. And so they'd be selling to me. So I felt like I was slimed. I had to go home and get a shower. I went to these mercenary groups, and then I went to these really social groups. And it was about happy hour and hors d'oeuvres. There was no business being done. Some people didn't even wear name tags. Some people didn't have business cards. I'm like, I'm here to network. What is it?
That sounds like me.
Yeah, well, no, you can't do that. You got to have a name tag. I carry a name tag in my briefcase with me everywhere. So that when I show up someplace and they don't have name tags, I pop my name tag on. I tuck business cards in various places in my briefcase. I put them in my wallet. I put them in my left pocket of every jacket. You could go through every jacket in my wardrobe, and in the left pocket are a stack of cards. They're in the glove compartment of my car. I keep them all over the place. And so what I wanted was something that would take the focus on business, but not be mercenary, and the focus on people, but not be that social, and merge them together, and do it with our principal core value of giver's gain. This idea of helping other people as a way of getting business for yourself. What I didn't realize was that people loved that concept. I think BNI without that principal core value would be a shell of what it is in terms of success.
So giver's gain that's the whole philosophy on which you founded the company before you even knew you were founding a company.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
But where did that come from for you? Because you were a business consultant in the early 80s. I'm guessing late 70s, early 80s.
Early 80s, yeah.
Okay, early 80s. There wasn't a lot of talk about that sort of a thing back then.
None. Yeah.
So where did that come from for you?
Well, I just intuitively felt that if people were going to give me referrals, they had to trust me. And the best way to build trust is to help someone. If you can help somebody and not ask them for anything, you accelerate the trust process, which I call the VCP process: visibility, credibility, profitability. But it's the trust process. And if you can accelerate the trust process, then you get business quicker. They'll refer you quicker, and they definitely want to refer you because you helped them. Whereas if all you're trying to do is sell to them, you're not going to get much business. I realized quickly that networking was more about farming than it was about hunting. It was about cultivating relationships. And the best way to cultivate a relationship is to help someone. So if you can help someone, all of a sudden, they like you more. You build more trust. They don't look at you as like you're only looking at them as a meal ticket. This is really true when you're networking up. When you're trying to network with somebody who you think is more successful than you, the worst thing to do is to try to sell to that person, because you will do what everybody else does. And so we trained this from an early stage in BNI, and people loved that concept. They were looking for something different. They realized that it's not just about sales. It's about relationships, and those relationships get you referrals, and those referrals get you sales. And people love that concept. And so we went from 20 chapters. By the way, I finally created a plan. At the end of the year, as a matter of fact, next week, I'll be spending several days off, and I always reflect. Where do I want to go? Where do I want to be in 5 years? Where do I want to be in 10 years? How did last year go according to plan? That year, I said to myself, what the hell just happened? That was not in the plan at all, none of that. And that's when I realized I had struck a chord in the business community, that people desperately wanted referrals. They didn't know how to do it. We don't teach this in colleges and universities anywhere in the world. And so this will help them do that. Then one of the things, as a business consultant, and you know this more than anyone, I knew the core values were critical, and that I needed to make the core values of the company part of the DNA of the organization. And so I just hammered home the 7 core values of BNI, with giver's gain being the principal core value, our philosophy. Because I'm a believer in Drucker's culture eats strategy for breakfast, and an awesome culture. And that's why I love that slide of yours that you could burn down their building, and they say, oh well, that stuff happens. Because if you can create that kind of culture in people, you can make mistakes easier. If they love the business, if they love you as a business person, you can make mistakes, and they're way more forgiving of you. And when you're building a business, you need forgiveness a lot.
Yeah, don't I know it?
Because, you screw up, you make mistakes. And so you need to have people who have your back, who go, okay, that was stupid. I wouldn't do that again. Where next? Where do we go next? And
right. So that's interesting, because I think a lot of times people confuse love with being. I mean, there's the forgiveness factor, but there's another element to that you just said. It's not just, oh, it's okay, everything's fine, I love you, it's fine, it's cool. If I really love and trust somebody, I'm going to call them on those things. Yep. I'm going to tell them when I think they made a mistake. I'm going to challenge them to do better, not just put on a happy face and pretend that everything's
That's
fine.
Exactly right. I would say that love and respect are 2 parts of a symbiotic relationship. That the respect comes, if they love the business, they love you as a person, and if they respect you, they're going to talk to you. They're going to have a conversation with you. They won't throw you under the bus immediately.
Right.
And so I got pulled back from many buses by a lot of good people. It's one of the reasons why I created, you hear people talking about creating a board of advisors.
Yeah.
Man, I did it. My board of BNI as of January 8th is 34 years old.
Yeah.
33 years ago, I created a formal board of advisors that has met multiple times every year for the last 33 years.
Same people?
No, it changes over time.
Mm-hmm.
We have some who've been on for 10 years.
Mm.
I think the longest is 10. It could be 15 years. It might be the longest, might be 15. So it's evolved over time, and it's gotten much bigger over time because now with technology, we don't have to get people together. We can do it via webinar. So we opened it up to the world. And these are people that love the business and they respect you enough to give you their honest answers. And I think both of those are really important. And so culture, critical. Givers gain, critical. And when you have people that just love the culture, the business is way more successful. We like to say in BNI, these guys bleed burgundy, which is our corporate color, one of our corporate colors. They bleed burgundy. They just love BNI, and they love what they do in BNI.
So what are the other values? Givers gain is the kind of the core of the core values, and then what are the others?
So there are 7 core values in total. Let me give you all 7 of them. The next one is building relationships. It's all about relationships. It's not about the transactions. It really is about relationships. And one of the reasons we meet every week in BNI. Do you want me to give you all 7 and then come back, or do you want me to talk about it each one?
Either way is fine. Either way is fine.
So one of the reasons we meet every week is that we know it's about building relationships, and that we experimented. Here's one of the screw-ups I made early on. We let people meet every other week instead of every week. And they passed 52% less referrals when they didn't meet every week. So the relationships are key. We've had anecdotal evidence of this from the beginning, but just recently there was an article that a journal article that came out that I just published my article on mentioning this. It's on entrepreneur.com. If you want it, I'll send you the link. But it talks about how long does it take to create a friend? This is beautiful stuff because it says a casual friend, and this is based on a journal of sociology and psychology, did a study and found, or published a study and found, that it takes about 50 hours of time with someone to become friends.
It's not just a matter of, you don't just click it.
Yeah, no. Facebook has redefined what a friend is.
Yeah, no shit.
So we're talking about real friends, not Facebook friends. Not Facebook friends. So 50 hours. Now, 50 hours can come through group meetings. Like, we've known each other through TLC. And although, I'm not sure we've ever spent really 50 hours face to face, we've spent more than 50 hours through TSC, bumping into each other at the sessions and, building the relationship where I feel comfortable enough to, refer you to come speak at the convention, which, believe me, I don't invite everyone. So it took time to build that trust. 50 hours for a casual friend, 90 hours for a friend. That's what the study found. And 200 hours for a close friend. Now, 200 hours doesn't mean you will become close friends, but it takes 200 hours to create a close friendship. By the way, that totally lines up with what we've experienced in BNI. Less than a year, you're not going to get a ton of business, and that's 50 hours. Roughly. 90 hours is over a year. All of a sudden, in that second year, we see it over and over again. Boom, referrals start going up. 200 hours, close friends, and now you're talking about 2 years in BNI, and now you're generating a lot more business. And so that face-to-face connection, that time together is absolutely critical. So relationships, that's core value number 2. Givers gain, relationships number 2. Lifelong learning is number 3. From the very beginning, we realized we're not teaching this in colleges and universities. We got to teach people how to network. And they got to all be on the same playbook. Did you ever play sandlot football?
You mean just in the backyard kind of thing?
Yeah, backyard.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Okay, I did too. The most common play was, okay, you guys block, You two just run out there and I'll pass the ball.
Exactly.
You know, that was the most common play. Well, that's the way people network. They wing it like sandlot football. What we found was you got to have a plan and you got to have a playbook. And if everyone's reading off the same playbook, then you execute that plan, you're going to generate a lot of business. That's critical. And so lifelong learning is important. We used to call it training and education, and we realized entrepreneurs don't like to be trained.
Yeah, right.
But lifelong learning, who doesn't want to do that? So that's why we spend so much time training people. We spend like 200,000 person hours a year just on leadership team training. We spent 6 figures creating a website called BNI University to teach people how to be a good member, how to run a great chapter. I mean, there's hundreds of hours of content up at BNI University. So that's number 3. Number 4 is kind of, I think, a surprise to people who aren't highly engaged in networks. And that's a positive. Well, actually, it's number 5. Let me give you number 4 first.
Okay.
This one probably won't surprise you. Traditions plus innovation. Traditions plus innovation. And I wanted to put them together, not separate them out.
Yeah.
Because I think they go hand in hand. I believe, and I've never seen anyone else write about this. I did a blog on it this year. I believe, you know, when you sit down, it's hard when you're starting a business, you're so busy to say, these are my 7 core values. I had 1 or 2. The way I developed the rest was I looked at my traditions. What were the traditions of the organization? What were the things we were actually doing that were really working? And those traditions became our core values. And most people don't talk about that. I think traditions come before the whole list of core values. You might have a couple, but the traditions come before the core values because it's about your behaviors, not your words.
And the traditions are those behaviors that get repeated because they work.
That's exactly right. So it was within those first 2 years that I created the whole list of core values or most of the list of core values, because it was based on the behaviors, and those behaviors were our traditions. There's a fantastic book that I highly recommend by Tom Connellan called Inside the Magic Kingdom. And it's about Disney and how one of the things they train on are traditions. They train on traditions. So, but I think if you are living in your traditions, you're living in the past. Traditions tell us who we are as a tribe, but they don't tell us where we want to go. I remember seeing a competitor once at a networking event who was speaking, and she said, it's been 10 years and we haven't changed one thing that our founder has created. And I remember sitting in the audience thinking, oh man, I hope they continue with that strategy. We are going to blow them out of the water. We are going to be way more successful than they are. And we now have thousands and thousands and thousands of chapters more than they do. At the time, we didn't. So I think it's traditions plus innovation. You always have to be looking at how you can improve what you're doing. And I'm not talking about just technology, although technology certainly is a big piece of it. I'm not talking about just technology. I'm talking about the processes that you use beyond technology. So that's number 3. Number 4 is what surprises people. Traditions is number 4. Number 5 is what surprises people. Positive attitude became one of our core values. You got to have a positive attitude. That doesn't mean you can't critically look at issues. It's almost like the Jim Collins quote where, you know, you got to face the ugly facts, face the ugly truth. That's important. You got to face the ugly truth, but you have to have solutions. It's Mark McCurgow 101. Yeah. Did you ever meet Mark?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. He's cool.
Solutions focused book.
Also a great musician.
Yeah, he is. I've heard him. So it's McCurgow 101. If all you do is focus on problems, you become an expert at the problems. If you focus on solutions, you become an expert at solutions. And I've done multiple surveys over the years and published them in a couple of my books. As what's the top 10 characteristics of a great networker? Positive attitude always comes in like number 3 or 4. I think the last time I did it, we surveyed like 4,000 people. It was number 3. Number 3 in the list of what do you want in a list of characteristics with somebody you're networking with. Positive attitude was one of them. when I first started BNI, I wouldn't have guessed that. I
Hmm.
wanted that, but I wouldn't have guessed that everybody else wanted that.
Right.
And it became one of our core values. So that's number 5. Number 6 is accountability. Accountability. So one of the strengths of a network is that most of the members are friends. One of the weaknesses of a network is that most of the members are friends.
Mm-hmm.
Friends don't like to hold friends accountable. The thing is, we're not a friendship organization. We're a referral organization. Now, we understand that it really helps if you like each other, but it's about accountability. Hockey without rules would be boxing on ice. You got to have rules. And if you want to be successful at networking, you got to have rules. So there's got to be accountability. And number 7 is recognition. You got to recognize people who have really done the things, the behaviors that you're looking for. I mean, that came right from my doctoral work. Frederick Hertzberg on how do you motivate people. He wrote it in the Harvard Business Review in the 60s, and he basically said, you can't motivate anyone. You got to figure out what they want, and they can motivate themselves, but you can create an environment for them to motivate themselves. And one of the key elements he found in his research for people to motivate themselves, one was recognition. And so, it's Ken Blanchard 101, catch people doing something right and recognize it.
Mm-hmm.
So we literally have in our systems ways to catch people doing things right and then to recognize them publicly in that process.
So you say you had that in your systems. Give me an example.
So a great example is our notable networker badges. They're blue badges. And we tell directors, go to a meeting and catch someone doing something right. Not wrong, right. And here are the kinds of things that we want you to look for, but you pick whatever you want, catch them doing something right, then stand up and recognize them. You stand up, for example, a good one would be a testimonial. We have found that if an individual can stand up and say, I've done business with Steve and you should do business with Steve also because, and then go into some detail as to why, that a great testimonial can actually be better than one referral, because a really good testimonial can lead to multiple referrals.
Right.
And we've got lots of experience seeing that very thing happen. So what we do is we train the directors, go to a meeting. If you see someone just rock the house with a great testimonial, what you want to do before the meeting ends is you want to stand up and you want to say, I'd like to recognize Steve today for having done a fantastic testimonial. When we talk about how important they are, that's if you looked it up in an encyclopedia, it would be a picture of him. He nailed it because he said this, and he said this. And so I want to give him a notable networker badge. They're blue badges that we have that are different than everybody else's badges. We want to give him a notable networker badge for having really done a great job on a testimonial. Thank you. And everyone, please applaud with me. That's the kind of recognition. That's an example of one of the kinds of things that we do. But there are many, many things built into the system.
So that in that instance, I'm picturing a BNI chapter. You've got an insurance agent, you got an attorney, you got a real estate person, professional people.
Right.
So I'm just picturing, some corporate attorney being given a notable networker badge and completely lighting up. I mean, it's like getting a gold star in kindergarten. It hasn't changed.
But they do. I swear to God, they really do. I bet you saw people.
Nobody's immune, in other words.
What's that?
Nobody's immune.
Well, look, some people are, it impresses more than others. But here's the thing. A genuine, heartfelt compliment does not fall poorly on anyone. It falls well to unbelievably well. The range is nice to fantastic.
Yeah.
And so a well-placed compliment, nobody's immune to that. I'm certainly not. When somebody compliments me, I feel good.
Yeah.
I'd like to think I'm not highly motivated by that. Yeah, that feels good.
Yeah, of course. I think, in my experience, a lot of times people that appear to respond neutrally or even negatively to a kind or positive word or compliment. It's not because they don't want it or don't like it. It's because they're not used to it. It can kind of mean the opposite. It appears to mean I don't want that, but what it really means is I need more of that so I can get used to that.
True. I think you're right. And if you're talking about an individual compliment, I agree with that. But when you're talking about a compliment in BNI, it's so part of our DNA that I don't think that happens much. Because what happens is when you can see it, when someone's really complimenting another person, you see people in the room going, yep, that's true. That's him. That's it. And when you see that happening, people might be embarrassed, but I don't think they say, yeah, no, I don't, no, that's not me. I think they accept it. And this is what I mean by, for me, this is how I created love in BNI, was through my core values. Because if people can really embrace the core values, they really understand the culture. And when they really understand the culture, they love the program and they bleed burgundy. Mm-hmm. And so core values were the key for me to get people to love the program.
So what I find interesting about that, if you look at those values, there's nothing in there that overtly says, get business.
No, not a single one.
And yet you measure the number of referrals, you measure the dollar amount of business that gets generated through those referrals, right?
Oh yeah.
It's a big
I could tell you the exact number. I think as of the last trailing 12 months was $13.6 billion US dollars.
Wow.
Yeah.
Over what period of time?
The last trailing 12 months.
Over 12 months?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And by the way, that's twice the gross domestic product of Liechtenstein.
Maybe Liechtenstein needs a couple more chapters.
Yeah, well, it's a small country, but still, Isn't that amazing that we could generate twice the GDP of a small country? I mean,
so you're focusing on those elements that people can fall in love with, and the result of that is the business and the numbers and the profitability, et cetera.
By the way, I gave you old information. That was last month. Now the trailing 12 months is $14.2 billion.
Wow.
So that's from December of last year through November of this year, $14.2 billion. Well, it's the same. Here's how I would equate it. You're a business consultant. When you're working with companies, you tell them one of your key success factors is your gross revenue, or that it's how much money you made. Mm-hmm. No, certainly your clients could give a rat's patootie how much money you made. What they care about is the quality of service they have, the experience they have. And so although one of the things you want to measure is the number of referrals and the value, the culture is that more esoteric piece of the equation, because if the culture is working right, the final result is what you want. I would equate it to a recipe. And I'm not a great chef. My wife is. But if you take all the individual ingredients, they're just individual ingredients. But when you put it all together, that's when you get this incredible dish that is awesome. That's the $14.2 billion.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You get that $14.2 billion because this is the recipe. These are the things you do. And yeah, we'll give you strategy, but this is to me, this is the whole culture eats strategy for breakfast, because the strategy is key. If anyone could do the same strategy I do, and they do, people do it. They go, I can do this BNI thing. We get people there, they do open networking, we introduce each other. I mean, come on, it's like you can't patent that. I got so many competitors, Steve, but nobody even has more than 500 groups. The average number of the average number of chapters a competitor has is like 5. We have 8,807 as of this morning. So it's the culture, my friend. And the culture is what creates passion, and the passion's what creates love for a business, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. So you guys are you're a franchise organization.
We are.
I'm imagining that you have circumstances where, I mean, there's one thing for a chapter to be underperforming, and you have to cut them loose or whatever. They're not. I imagine that happens as it does in any franchise.
Yes. Well, the chapter, but one franchise can operate multiple chapters.
Right. Yeah. So over the years, have you ever run into a scenario where somebody was performing well, but doing it in a way that wasn't congruent with your values? Has that ever happened?
Yeah. Yeah, when you run a franchise and you're dealing with entrepreneurs, it's like herding cats. So, yeah, absolutely. And they need redirection and coaching. And sometimes it's not a good fit. And in those cases, we do our best to coach them. Here's how we say it: coach them up or coach them out. Mm-hmm. Those are the choices. And we'll take anybody and coach you and coach you and coach you and help you and support you and give you love, care, and attention to help you become better. And if that doesn't work, we'll help coach you out because the numbers just aren't working.
So, but what if the numbers are working? But the approach to the numbers is not.
I got to tell you that is almost. I cannot think of one occasion where that has worked as a long-term strategy. Not one. I've been doing this 34 years now.
Yeah.
I can't think of one where people did it really differently. And I don't mean just the structure, but the culture, and survived. Because you could almost always look at the numbers and tell whether they're implementing either the culture or the strategy. Mm-hmm. If you look at the numbers, they're either not doing the strategy right or they're not doing the culture right. Every time. But you don't even have to look at the numbers. You get complaints.
Yeah.
I'm so visible on social media. The complaints come right to me. Mm-hmm. So, some guy in India that's not following some piece of the culture, I get a personal message, and they know, anybody who's with BNI for any length of time knows Ivan's going to see this stuff. Mm-hmm. And so it just doesn't last long. It may take a long time to turn somebody around, but we know who they are. I could tell you who's not following our program culturally.
So in my just building on the values piece a little bit, then I have another question for you. In my experience at the conference in Bangkok, and you had told me this before, and then you demonstrated it for me. When you got up to introduce me, you asked the group, which was nearly 3,000 people from 75 different countries, whatever.
Yeah.
You asked the group, how did you ask the question? What are the words?
What's the core? In 2 words, what's the philosophy of BNI?
Yeah.
And you heard it loud and clear, yeah?
I did. Thousands of people to say givers gain without any hesitation. It wasn't like, let's see, two words. It was immediate.
Here's the beauty of that, Steve. You could drop in on a chapter anywhere in the world. You could. And say, hey, in a couple of words, what's the philosophy of BNI? And I promise you, in 99% of the chapters you dropped into, you'd hear them all say the same thing. It wouldn't be as loud, but they'd say the same thing. And that's, when I talk to people about this, I want them to think about that. How does that happen? And I tested this once at a convention. I said, and I wouldn't use these companies, use whatever other companies you want. But I said, before I even said, BNI thing, I said, what's the core philosophy of McDonald's? Okay, I'm going to count to 3. I want you to all yell it out. And you know what you heard? You heard, hey,
Yeah.
I said, okay. Well, maybe it was McDonald's. Well, what's the core philosophy of Coca-Cola? I'm going to count to 3. 1, 2, 3. And you heard, blah, 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 blah. And I think I did one other company, and then I did BNI, and it was clear. How many companies can you name in the world where you ask not just the franchisees, but you ask the franchisees, you ask the employees of the franchisees, and you ask the customers of the franchisees, because that's who you had in that room. You had all of them, right, where you would hear the same 2 words.
Yeah. That
comes when I say our culture, the giver's gain is part of the DNA of the company. I mean it. And I think that's the beauty of creating an organization where people love the organization. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. So that's the traditions part. So the innovation part, or in other words, the future, as you look ahead. So for you personally, BNI is your legacy, or it's a big part of your legacy, obviously.
Yeah.
Not your entire legacy, but a big part of your legacy. And over the last few years, you've taken in partners. You've kind of changed your role.
I'm now the Colonel Sanders of BNI.
The Colonel Sanders. And as you look ahead, kind of from your perspective, but also from the perspective of the organization, given what you know about how powerful the culture is, how effective this giving orientation in networking is, what do you see for the future of the company? What is the innovation side of the equation?
I have an answer. I'm thinking about whether I want it public.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Let me just be tactful with it. So I think that as an organization changes, that it can deal with the complexities of change when it is always true to its core values and to its culture. So change is always painful. Doesn't matter what the organization is. You know that. But if the organization is true to the core values, the change is received a little bit easier. I think there's going to be change. We're probably looking at 5, 10 years, certainly 10 years down the road. We're going to see massive change in networking. And I believe my company will either be, and here's where I'm getting controversial. My company is going to either be disruptive or it's going to be the leader of disruption. And I want my company to be the leader of disruption. And I don't know how that's going to exactly look, but I have a sense. And my sense is that it's going to involve technology and it's going to involve mixed reality, like virtual reality. I believe the future of face-to-face networking is online. That there will be, I believe at some point, BNI chapters that are a little bit, and I don't know that it'll look exactly like this, but at least this gives you a framework. It's going to be like the Jedi Knights in Star Wars. That there will be some form of mixed reality, whether it's holographic or virtual, and real reality, physical reality, where there are people in the room and there are people who are not in the room, and they're interacting and networking and connecting. And when my people hear this, it scares the heck out of them, because we have local groups, and I've always felt face-to-face is better. And it is. And I would urge people to continue to do face-to-face, but we live in a society where we're traveling a lot. And so if we can provide opportunities for people to be face-to-face, literally, physically face-to-face most of the time, and occasionally face-to-face through mixed reality, I think that's honestly, I think that's inevitable. Like it or don't like it.
Yeah.
It's inevitable. And I don't want to be Sears. I don't want to be Sears. I mean, think about it for a minute, Steve. Sears was Amazon.
Yeah, they were it.
100 years ago?
Yeah, the
who
catalog.
did people go to?
Yeah.
They went to the Sears catalog.
Right.
And Sears did not make the transition to online effectively. They may have gone online, but they didn't do it effectively. Sears could be one of the largest companies in the world today. I think they filed bankruptcy this year, didn't they?
Yeah.
I don't want to be Sears. I want to be Amazon for networking. And I think that's the future of the business. And it's not going to happen overnight.
Right.
But it's going to happen in my lifetime. I wrote an article on that too, if you want it.
Oh, yeah, send it to me, please. So the other thing that struck me about your company is the cross-cultural universality of it. I said I was just reviewing some of the I got the footage from the keynote.
Oh, good.
And it's great stuff. The production team did a great job.
They did. You did a great job, my friend. You did a fantastic job. When Graham Weimiller, the CEO, comes up to me and says, he was the perfect speaker.
Yeah.
He was exactly what we needed. He's only done that twice, by the way, in 4 years.
Oh, that's cool.
4 years, twice a year, international convention, national conference. He's only done that twice. Mike Rayburn was the other.
Oh, yeah? Cool.
Yeah. So when he comes to me and says, he's exactly what we needed, you should feel really good, because that's an amazing...
he just likes the guitar, apparently.
Trust me, the guitar was only icing.
No.
It was no question the message.
Thank you. So what I noticed, and I actually said this to the group when I first started my keynote, because it was already apparent to me within the first 10 minutes how extraordinary a gathering that was, because you have people literally all over the world who are united around a core value, coming from very different cultures, different religions, different traditions, different this, different that, different parts of the world, different everything, united around a core value. And when you dig deeper into that, it's not just because there's an intellectual understanding of giver's gain. It's because they love it.
It's emotional.
Yeah, it's the level of the heart that draws people together. And from my perspective, it was really gratifying because, I've spoken in various parts of the world, Singapore, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, China, South America, but a piece here, a piece there, a piece there, and every culture is a little bit different. And they all resonate with that love is just damn good business, etc. message. But that was the first time that I saw that response simultaneously from all these places around the world. And it's, obviously those two things are very congruent. And I think that's, that's why they resonated with it. But the universality of those values gives me a lot of hope for what we can accomplish as human beings.
I agree with that. Oftentimes, I don't know, you probably didn't hear me. I don't think I said it at this conference, but oftentimes people will, when I go to another country and I'm speaking, especially in Q&A, they'll say, this BNI thing's so American. And I'll say, this is actually the least American thing I've ever done. They're like, what? How could that be? Because, it's so stand up, you talk about yourself. I said, yeah, but when you think of American companies, do you think of cooperation, collaboration, giver's gain? Let me help you, you help me. No, you think of dog eat dog. I'm going to put that guy out of business. You're fired. This is what you think of when you think of American companies. And they all laugh just like that.
Yeah.
And I said, I'll tell you what this is. This is entrepreneurial. What we teach transcends cultural differences, because there is no country around the world where helping other people, trust and relationship building is not key to referrals.
Mm-hmm.
It's key to referrals. And so when we often think of cultural differences in terms of an American versus a Thai, but I would suggest that there is a culture that transcends many cultures, and that's the culture of entrepreneurism. And what we have tried to do in BNI is to put an overlay on top of all of the cultural differences that may exist. And we don't work outside the culture unless you come to an event like you did. 99% of our meetings are within the culture.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not trying to change the culture. We're just putting an overlay or a system or a process or structure on top of the existing culture.
And I would say that I picture it differently, metaphorically. It's not so much that you have an overlay.
What is it?
It's more like you're putting something in that brings out the best in that particular culture. Right? It's because you're not superimposing something on it that
well, we are imposing a structure, a process.
The process. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Gotcha. And it's the values that are kind of bringing out what's already there, and the structure is the way to implement it.
Yeah, because every country we go into says, no, we're different. We're different than those Yanks. We do it differently than you do. Yeah. But when we and one of the things that we learned over time, I'll give you away a trade secret here. Share it, don't share it, I don't care. When we open up some countries, like when we opened in Australia, at first there was a lot of pushback that, no, we're different than the Americans. So what we did is we realized we were handing them out an American manual, and they use Queen's English. And so the manual was small 20 years ago, it was maybe 350 pages, I think it was, the main manual. And we changed the entire manual to Queen's English. So instead of organization with a Z, it was organization with an S. And instead of check, C-H-E-C-K, it was check.
Right. Whilst.
Yeah. So we made it, and instead of good morning, everyone, it was good day, mates, stuff like that. That's it. There's the only change. We made 450 changes, 350 page manual.
Right.
So when we kicked off the next chapter, we said, okay, you all know this started in America. This is no longer an American program. We want you to know that going out right from the very beginning. This is now an Australian program. Here's the Australian version. And people, I swear to you, Steve, they looked at it and were like, yeah, mate, this will work. This will go well here. Rather than try to argue with cultural differences, we just say, yeah, there's cultural differences. We get it. Yeah. But here are our core values, and those core values transcend cultural differences. Yeah. And it's just a whole different ballgame implementing BNI in new countries now when we use that approach.
Yeah, that's great. This is great stuff. Fantastic. Thank you.
My pleasure.
So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Dr. Ivan Misner, the Colonel Sanders of BNI. And, every time I talk to Ivan, I just feel so inspired. I mean, here's a guy who's built such an incredible, well, let's just use the word, an empire that started with just a really simple idea and almost fell into it by accident. It's really quite amazing. Makes me wonder what kind of happy accidents might be just around the corner for all of us as well. Thanks for tuning in to the Love is Just Damn Good Business podcast. Talk to you next time.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Love is Just Damn Good Business with Steve Farber. Join us again next time, because when customer and employee satisfaction just isn't enough anymore, we are here to back you up with specific ideas to operationalize love to make an enormous difference in your business, personal life, and the world around you. Visit our website at stevefarber.com to leave a review. And don't forget to share the love with your colleagues and friends, because after all, it's just damn good business.